With Nicolas Maduro ousted and regimes in Cuba and Nicaragua flailing, the Fidel Castro-inspired left that once held sway over Latin America is fading. Yet across the southern border of the United States, a different kind of left-wing politics is not only still alive, but thriving. Mexico's Morena is more benign, less ideological, and far younger than the Marxism-Leninism that emanated across the Caribbean in the 20th century. It has no serious rivals in Mexico. It was founded in 2011 to carry its founder, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, to the presidency. Since achieving that in 2018, the party has dominated Mexican politics. Together with its allies, it controls 24 of Mexico's 32 states. It holds supermajorities in both legislative houses, more than two-thirds of the seats in each. It draws comparisons with the Institutional Revolutionary Party, the PRI, that ruled Mexico as a one-party state for 7 decades, until 2000. But, as Morena has become more entrenched, it looks ever less likely to rescue Mexico from its most serious problems: powerful drug gangs, corruption, and a feeble economy. The party and its leaders remain popular. The question is how long that popularity can last. And that is from an article entitled "Mexico's Mighty Left-Wing Government is Floundering," from The Economist, January 20th, 2026. I'm Joshua Treviño, and this is The Hard Country.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Hard Country. My name is Ariana Guajardo. Today, we have some rumors to address. So we are talking about the Morena party, Trump potentially making some requests of them, and also the 37 members of cartel gangs who have been brought into America, or delivered, I guess, to America by the Morena party.
Yeah.
So let's start with this Economist article. I want to get into talking about the Morena party, and specifically how Sheinbaum stacks up against AMLO and how long this popularity may last. That's really what this article gets into.
Right.
So let's start there. Where does Sheinbaum stand now in terms of her popularity with the Mexican people?
She remains very popular, actually. So she's had a dip in popularity, but all that means is that she's gone from circa 85% approval to circa 75% approval. I think any normal Democratic, small d Democratic leader would love to have her approval ratings. This article in The Economist is very interesting. We'll put a link in the show notes to it. But one of the things that it signifies to me is that the positive press that Claudia has received, in particular since being elected in summer 2024, is now over. We're now at the beginning of 2026. And she has received from most media, there have been some exceptions, this show, for example, but there have been some exceptions, but from most media that has written on her, particularly in what I would describe as kind of normie outlets, a lot of admiration for her style, for her aesthetic, for her technocratic approach, what seems like a technocratic approach. The fact that she at least formally endorses sort of this kind of Davos-inflected mainstream center-left agenda. It's much more of a leftist agenda than a center-left one, but her presentation has been very well received. And even in some odd places, kind of on the new right. There have been articles like in Compact, for example, which is a good publication, but in Unheard, I think, is another example where you've seen sort of these right-wing outlets pop up with praise for sort of the Morenista program because they reduce welfare bureaucracy, which is true actually, but the reason that they do that is because they just issue direct payments to families, right? So there's
one way to cut through red tape.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's a lot of cross currents there, and of course, it's like every movement, it's heterogeneous and it's part of a coalition. But for The Economist, which I take as sort of this tribune of received wisdom at this point. Remember when The Economist used to be very exciting to get? Well, you probably don't.
I was going to say, Josh, I'm not sure if I do remember that era. I may have been in school still during that time.
There was an era in the 1990s where The Economist was incredibly insightful and very cleverly edited. And I remember very specifically after the 94 elections in the United States. Of course, at this point, I'm 19. So
Josh, I was going to say maybe I was still like in like a grade school. Josh, I was not born yet at that point.
You were like -8, right? And
yeah. In 94, like -6.
-6. Okay, close enough. Well, anyway, death is coming for us all, Ariana. But I remember that they had this photograph inside of Apache helicopters, and the caption was something very clever and British, like "The Republicans are coming" or things like that, which I thought, oh, what a great magazine. Anyway, it had really good insight. No longer the case. I actually don't feel like I need to read The Economist anymore. But in cases like this, and what's useful about it is that it signals a turn against, or at least a disenthrallment with this narrative that the Morenistas, and Claudia in particular, has been able to leverage very effectively to her advantage over the past several months. Now it's over, and now there's some accountability coming from avenues that they care about, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, the article is characterizing it as the honeymoon stage is over. But it's funny because in America, if you have a 70% approval rating, that doesn't seem like the honeymoon would be over. But I guess it's different in Mexico, especially with AMLO having such huge popularity beforehand.
The contours. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead. You first.
Well, I was going to say that it seems to me that she has large shoes to fill in regards to charisma and holding to the party together, even though they still occupy, like this says, super majorities in both legislative houses. So I guess what I'm wondering is, what does that look like for her? Or what steps does she have to take to try to continue to garner the support of the people?
One of the commonplaces here in Texas, I mean, we're recording in Texas. The Texas Public Policy Foundation obviously works in Texas policy. But one of the commonplaces that you'll hear from people who know how Texas legislation in particular works is and you'll hear it from time to time, this idea that Texas is really a three-party state. You've got, and I won't get too in-depth in this, but you've got the Democrats on one side, and then you have this type of Republican and that type of Republican, and so all action in the ledge, I'm oversimplifying, is sort of this exercise in developing a coalition out of these three parties, and so you can see that unfold. The reason that I bring that up is something very similar pertains with Morena. Morena's got a 2/3 majority in both houses. Obviously, it's got a president who's exceedingly popular, but the reality is that there's not just one Morena party. And I want to be clear what I'm arguing when I say that. I'm not saying that there isn't a central, programmatic core of Morena, because Morena does possess an ideology. It possesses a strategic goal for Mexico. But at the same time, there's various factions inside Morena. They don't all like each other, and they're not all, going to necessarily row in the same direction. You've got individuals who are, and I think we talked about this on the show before. If we haven't, we should have. You've got the ideologues who are sort of the true believers in this Cuatro T, this transformative project for the nation that's going to change.
And that's where Sheinbaum comes out of, right?
100%. Yeah. She's a true ideologue, actually. For all the talk about corruption in Morena, which is real. I actually, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. I don't think that Claudia Sheinbaum is actually one of the corruptos. I don't think she's in receipt of cartel money, or if she is, she's not as public about it as AMLO was. He's definitely in receipt of cartel money. I don't think she is. I don't think, for example, Omar Garcia Harfuch is. So I would say that she's a representative of this ideological class that really believes that Mexico and Mexican society needs to be remade upon these essentially populist left, authoritarian left lines.
And she went to Berkeley, right?
Yes. She received a chemical engineering PhD. I could be wrong about that, so double check the internet. But yeah, she's a scientist from Berkeley. But
I'm just thinking that ideology seems to align pretty well with a lot of people who come out of Berkeley.
100%, yeah. It's and that's a really good point. Like the cross fertilization of like U.S. academia with a lot of Latin America's elites is robust. We have a similar phenomenon in transmission belt between the U.S. and Europe as well, which is why we need to shut down academia until we can figure out what's going on. Because
from
honestly,
your lips to God's ears, that's all I can say.
Well, seriously, but one of the things that we in the United States have done, and we should assume responsibility for this, is we have, to a shocking extent, educated a lot of the left authoritarian cadres that then go back into their countries of origin and do terrible things. Mexico is one example of that. Now, with that being said, I don't think Sheinbaum's actually worked in the sciences since like 1997, when you were negative 4 at that point. Yeah, so it's been a while. But she chose to become a political figure and then obviously ascended to the presidency of Mexico. But you've got the ideologues. You have the people who are in it because they're just nakedly corrupt, which is actually a lot of them. You have what I would describe as the opportunists, who would have been the core of the old PRI autocracy back in the day. And then you've got kind of subgroups. You've got the indigenistas. You've got people who think that they're like Latter-day Juaristas. So there's all sorts of individuals who come together to constitute Morena. And the question is, kind of to your point, they all coalesced around the figure of Andrés Manuel, who is still the patron of the entire infrastructure. Can Claudia hold it together? That's the big question facing Mexican politics and civics. I think she can, to an extent, until, and I know you're going to get to this, certain questions are posed about accountability for one of the factions. So you tell me.
Well, I want to address some of the rumors, actually, surrounding what some of the demands that they've potentially received. So there's a rumor that the Trump administration has sent a list requesting certain higher level cartel members to be delivered to the United States. And then this is, again, speculation that potentially even AMLO himself is on that list. Now, when we're talking about popularity and specifically this party who coalesced around this one figure being on this list, how could this shake out? And also, do we have any reason to believe that these rumors are true?
Yes. So we must handle this with great delicacy. And I want to be clear to the listeners that this is all secondhand. But anybody who's paying attention to Mexican Twitter is very robust, by the way. It is a delight. Do you follow Mexican Twitter?
I do not follow Mexican Twitter, and I only know about this from I sat in one of the meetings that I'm usually not in for the campaign for the Secure and Sovereign Nation campaign.
Yes.
And we were talking about new priorities, which we need to have a separate episode on.
Okay, we can do that
for SSN. But we had someone there potentially confirming some of these rumors.
We did.
So it was news to me. But yeah, tell me more about the Mexican side of Twitter.
Let me talk to that then. So one thing that we have urged at the foundation for years, actually, at this point, is that the United States needs to demand accountability from the political class that supports the narcos in Mexico. So it is not enough to deliver actual formal cartel members to justice in the United States. Not enough to arrest them. It's not enough to send them there. That's all good. That needs to happen, and they should. But the reality, and this has been our analysis for years, is that because Mexico is governed by the state cartel synthesis, you actually have to penalize the members of the state. If you just penalize the cartels, then all the state's going to do is find new cartel partners. I mean, essentially, there's going to be like a merry-go-round, and they'll pick somebody new, and like the door will revolve, and so on.
And the people they'll send will be the out-group, I guess.
The people will send will be the out-group. That's exactly right, because there will be some cartels that are favored and some that are not, and essentially there's a de facto infinite supply of mid-level cartel guys. There's actually an infinite supply of top-level cartel guys too. That you send them north and keep the Americans happy. And honestly, that has worked for a long time. But what we need to do is we also need to go after the politicians without whom that synthesis would not work. And there's a lot of them. They're governors, they're senators. They probably include President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. There's a lot of evidence that's been published in the New York Times and ProPublica and from the DOJ and so on, suggesting that he has been in some way on the payroll of the Sinaloa cartel since 2006. So the most important figure in Mexican civics, even now, is probably a narco to some extent. They call him the Narco-Presidente on Mexican Twitter. So we need to go after these people. What has happened literally in the past week is there has been a ton of chatter. And we have to stress it's just chatter, right? That the United States has very quietly delivered a list of politicians, not criminal narcos, not cartel men, but politicians that we want arrested and extradited to the United States. And it was such an extraordinary thing. What you'll read, and again, all this is floating out in the public record, and you shouldn't immediately credit all of this, but what we read is that there's been emergency meetings in the Palacio Nacional over it, that it's a real crisis, sparks a real crisis in Mexican governance, because of course this is gonna require taking on the core of Morena. At the core of Morena is this state cartel partnership. We have to understand it's not like a few corrupt actors. Like these are central figures to the regime. And so I asked people that we know in Mexico City. I'm going to sound like this very vague, sound like Candace Owens at this point. Like I asked people who know the conspiracy. Are you going to edit that out?
You got so spicy there for a second. See, I don't want to, but anyway.
No, that's fine.
But let's continue from here.
Wait. Well, so let me finish though. So I asked people, and so they went and they asked people, and every single person, because it was multiple individuals that we asked, came back and told me that the list is real. So again, can I confirm it? Absolutely not. I can't confirm it. I don't know. I haven't seen the list. I don't know who's on the list. But everybody that I would ordinarily ask about things like this have told me that the list is real. They also have told me that they don't know what's on the list. But if that's true, if it is true that we have given the Mexicans a list of narco-politicians that need to be rounded up, then it means that two things have happened. First, whoever is running the Mexico policy in the administration is doing the right thing, and kudos to him. It's not clear to me exactly who it is, but that's good, because we're actually pursuing the American interest vis-a-vis Mexico, which is phenomenal. The other thing it means, though, is that it's going to force the regime to choose, and it is the crisis in the regime, if pursued to the hilt, that we have wanted to push for a long time, because Claudia is going to have to make a choice. She's going to have to choose between us or them. She's going to have to choose between the partnership with the Americans or the partnership with Andres Manuel. And from our perspective, we should be clear, it's a win, whichever she picks. Because if she chooses the partnership with us, fantastic. And if that happens, we owe her every ounce of cooperation and security that we can provide and intelligence that we can provide, because she will be taking a tremendous risk and actually demonstrating some bravery, in my view. If she chooses Andres Manuel and his cohort, whether or not he's on the list is irrelevant, then that too is a choice, and we have the ability to bring consequences. As longtime listeners here know, I don't think the consequences need to be military. I mean, obviously you should retain all options on the table, but the lever that we have at hand is USMCA. And if there is a positive decision to protect the political class that connects with the narcos in defiance of an explicit request from the United States, then we should wash our hands of that economic relationship. And good luck to them.
And for listeners who haven't been keeping up with the last two episodes, we've been talking about the USMCA, or U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement.
Yes.
And that's set to renew in July or June this summer.
Well, the reauthorization has to be in by July 1st of this year. Yeah. Right.
So this summer this is coming, and this is a trade agreement, but what you're proposing is tying security guarantees to trade and using that as a point of leverage. But something that I'm wondering about, so we heard about this rumor that there's a list of politician narcos who has been delivered to Mexico requesting them. And then a few days after that, on January 21st, this is an article from the Daily Wire, dozens of Mexican cartel fugitives flown to the United States to face justice.
Great.
So Pam Bondi stated that this is another landmark achievement in the Trump administration's mission to destroy the cartels. These 37 members, including terrorists from the Sinaloa cartel, CJNG, and others, will now pay for their crimes against the American people on American soil. We are grateful for this collaboration with our internal partners and will deliver swift, comprehensive justice for members of foreign terrorist organizations who have spent years preying on the American people. So this comes out only a few days after potentially this other list was floating around. Are these personnel connected in any way? Could this be a way of Mexico trying to start delivering on the list?
Yeah, well, no. So this isn't the list. The rumored list. Again, we have to emphasize this: rumors. The rumored list. This is not the rumored list of people. So what happens every time this happens? If there's American pressure that's brought to bear, then and we've seen this mechanism in action several times in 2025 and now in 2026. The Mexicans will suddenly discover that they've got 24 people that we want, and they'll send them north. So I assume they're holding several hundred more in reserve. So every time, and their intent is obviously it's a pressure relief valve. They're going to say, well, we can't give you Governor X, we can't give you Senator X, but I will give you these 24 people, 37 people in this case. And
I think in total over the last year, it's been close, I think about 90 some people that have been delivered to the United States.
Well, fantastic. I mean, look. I think the Mexican labor sector, like the Mexican workforce participation. I think something like 1 in 5 people are working in sectors either directly in or related to cartel activity. So we got 90 of them. Great. I mean,
putting
great.
That's good.
Percentage
out there
this is
huge.
fine, but it is. So what they're doing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. They have to do more. They have to break the alliance, the political alliance with the cartels. And that's what we keep harping on. So fantastic. Love to see it. Glad they're welcome to Texas for all of them. But I'd much rather see their political partners on a plane heading north.
Are you expecting that over the next few months we'll be seeing more stories of more, I guess, lower level, in this case, cartel members being sent over?
This is going to happen again and again.
Okay.
This is the latest episode in a thing. And again, I want to be really clear. I'm not disparaging this. All right. This is not irrelevant what they're doing. It's good. It's good. And every single person that I've talked to, whatever their opinion on Mexican security, has said very specifically that they have a great deal of trust in Omar Garcia Harfuch. I haven't met him. I don't know. But I actually do take their word for it. So I think, my impression is that he is making a good faith effort to do these things. But the real strategic decisions are not in his hands. They're in the hands of the president herself.
So what are we expecting to see from America between now and summer? Are you guessing that the Trump administration is going to make some of this public, or are we expecting that a lot of this will happen behind the scenes?
Impossible to say. in full candor, and obviously, I think anybody who predicts what the president of the United States is going to do or say at any point is on a fool's errand. He is the most public-private diplomacy person we may have ever had in the presidency, and so it's entirely you could envision multiple scenarios. You could envision there being a prudential decision that the president agrees with to keep it behind closed doors because there's a greater likelihood of getting what we need. I could see that, and that's very easy for me to envision. It is equally easy for me to envision frustration building to the point where the demands go public. If the demands go public, so if the demands exist, again, we're operating in like this contingency. First of all, like if the demands exist and if they go public, so two levels of conditionality here, then you were looking at a serious rupture in the U.S.-Mexico relationship, at which a lot of things are on the table that wouldn't be before. So I would watch to see if that happens.
So if people want to continue keeping up with what's happening and also what both Texas and the United States might be able to do to alleviate some of the burdensome relationship, should we call it here, where can people keep up with that?
Well, obviously at TexasPolicy.com, they can come to the Secure and Sovereign Nation campaign, which we will do another show on, but actually is our integrated campaign to pursue good policy, both Texas-Mexico and also U.S.-Mexico policy. So look us up there. And then obviously hit like and subscribe for The Hard Country if you haven't already. We have an audience of dozens, hundreds.
Have you seen Arrested Development where Tobias, one of the characters, is like, there's dozens of us.
Dozens of us. Yeah. The upgrade is to don't buy. It's incredible. But but I will say this, and for those of you listening out there watching on YouTube, the audience for this, although it's niche, is very committed.
This is actually one of the larger shows at the foundation, so we're usually getting a few hundred people.
I think that's right. Yeah, and they tend to be very committed. They tend to be involved in policy. Sorry, not to go too meta, like make a show about the show, but in Washington D.C. in particular, and also in Austin, Texas, I think you and I have talked about this. Like there are people on the street who will stop and say, "Are you the Hard Country people?" And it's interesting to see.
Right, and this is only possible again because we have a good coalition of people who are helping us sometimes even suss out the rumors.
That's true.
A little bit.
That's true. No, so we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, well,
anyway.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. The Texas Public Policy Foundation also put out our legislative action agenda that shows some of the things that SSN, is, the Secure and Sovereign Nation campaign, is starting with, but that is only the beginning. So thank you for taking the time, Josh. Thank you to all of you, and we'll see you next time.